welcome to Born for the Trades, a home service podcast. I'm your co-host Shreya, here with your host Mandeep.
Hey.
Today we have a guest, Spencer Sharpe, and he was highly recommended in the Facebook comments on Mandeep's post because we wanted to get more into health and fitness in this area. He's an online fitness coach with a background in kinesiology. Is that right?
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Okay, nailed it. We got it. You know, it's good if you can't pronounce it, right? He's been coaching all kinds of clients for almost a decade, and particularly people who grew up athletic and are now focused on their professional life. He can help you understand how to get the most out of just a few simple things in fitness. If you want to learn more about how you can get results in less time with something called a no BS approach, which I'm really excited to talk about that because it seems like there's a lot of that in this subject, and it's kind of hard to figure out what to do, especially for professionals that are trying to find work-life balance, get into health and fitness without it being too overwhelming or something that they can't stick to consistently. So welcome so much to the show, Spencer.
I really appreciate the intro. I will do my best to live up to that.
Join us as we dive deep into the world of home service entrepreneurship, interacting with industry leaders, coaches, and entrepreneurs about their experiences, challenges, and victories. Through their inspiring stories, we hope to equip our listeners with the tools and knowledge they need to succeed in the competitive home service industry. So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, tune in to Born for the Trades podcast for invaluable insight and real-world inspiration.
Welcome to our show,
I'm sure you
Spencer. I'm excited. A lot of people, when I posted that on Facebook and asking, I think a lot of home service industry owners, they commented and they wanted Spencer to be on the show. So really excited to have you here.
As am I, yeah, and I'm grateful that I put enough good stuff out there that people would recommend. So let's hopefully give your audience some actionable stuff today.
Absolutely. Let's get started with Spencer. Let's start with your story. Please share your story. How did you get into this fitness world?
It is a happy accident, honestly. I did a science fair project in the 8th grade, and I chose health sciences. So I used myself as a subject. I used I had this little blood pressure monitor I put on my wrist, and I would go do some exercise and see how that changed over time. And it was really fun. So by doing that, I was in the gym, I was exercising, I was trying these things. My old hockey coach used to manage the local gym. And so from there, I didn't want to stop. I just kept doing this, and I didn't really have, besides playing sports, I didn't really have a lot of friends. So I just spent a lot of time in the gym. He made a program for me, got started. Over summer jobs, friends and clients started to coworkers started to notice that, like, hey, this guy does fitness all the time. Maybe I'll ask him questions. Maybe I'll, bug him. And, helping my first person at 16 years old lose 30 pounds over summer, I thought, wow, this is really rewarding. Like this guy went from not playing baseball because he could barely run to second base without losing his breath, and now he's out playing twice a week. Like, this feels really good. Let's go do this. And that's where I chose to go to university, have my kinesiology degree, and then of course a lot of ups and downs in there, but coached people in person for, I want to say, like 5 or 6 years, and the rest has been online. So that's the Cliff Notes version. Lots of details in between, but happy accident is basically how I got into fitness.
Can you explain kinesiology to everybody?
Sure, yeah. So kind of like I was saying before, I think a lot of people assume that it's sports science, and it's not totally wrong. It's basically just understanding how the human body functions and moves. And so a lot of my friends who I went to school with will actually use this as the prerequisite to go to medical school, because there's a lot of like the anatomy, the physiology, the chemistry, things like that, and really just understanding all of that. But I chose to, because it's such a diverse field, focus mostly on the human movement part. So I would say in university, the two areas of like study that I really did well with was the practical application, like being able to look at what someone's doing and diagnose what they should maybe do instead, or how we fix something, as well as some of the psychology behind coaching. I really loved talking about behavior change and how we get people to buy in.
Wow. And so would you say that that's the thing that maybe sets you apart as a coach? Because there's a lot especially right now, this is a big industry blowing up for business owners that are trying to get get back their health, maybe after throwing it away because they put everything into their business. How do you apply that when you're coaching somebody like an entrepreneur, what you've learned in that field?
That's a fantastic question, and I think about the no BS approach. That's where we try to do less but better. Like, I'm not going to be the guy that tells someone who works in HVAC that during summer when you're at your absolute busiest and you have 10 calls a day and you're going out and doing your consultations and everything, that you also need to go into the gym and work out for an hour and a half. Like, I'm not going to be that guy. And so how can we get the most out of a little? And so I think that is where my background really helps a lot is, what's fluff and what is it? What's actually going to help someone make improvements in their life, get stronger, have less pain, feel a little bit better as they move throughout their day, like they have more energy, things like that. How can we do that with as little as possible? And so that's where I think my background definitely does help me. And in terms of, the industry is big, but it's also so small. I can't remember the exact stat, but I think that the supplement industry is 2 times bigger than the whole rest of the fitness industry. So there's a lot of room for everyone. Like everyone like me, we can win. We can lean into whatever we think makes us unique, and everybody can have more than enough.
Right. I love that you mentioned that no BS approach. Right. Let's deep dive more into it. Like, what is no BS approach? Like, what specific diet or your approach that you follow for your clients?
Well, it's a lot of meeting people in the middle and understanding that if you have these constraints in your life already, how can we work around you? So, take any type of person that you work with in your business. A lot of plumbers, a lot of people work in hydrovac or not hydrovac into HVAC. What are their routines going to look like, and what can they reasonably fit in? If they can only do 3 workouts a week, then cool. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to try to make that as efficient as possible. Also understanding what are some of the things that this kind of person is going to face. And so, like a plumber, for example, when he's carrying his or her really heavy vacuum, I've had plumbers come into my place before too. They have that big shop vac that they carry that's got to weigh at least like 40 pounds. They're carrying that with one arm every single day, multiple times a day. Let's, first off, in your work, let's maybe try to get you switch sides, even things out a little bit. But what are the kind of, injuries that you might run into? Because when I did some research before this podcast, I wanted to make sure that I understand the main injuries. And so they are usually like overuse injuries. They are sprains and strains from either like slipping and falling or just repetitive movements. Think about like if you're always turning, knobs with this one hand.
Right.
Like, okay, well, now your left side is going to be at a deficit. And so what are the needs of this person? What are the constraints they have? And how can we do it? And how can we help them maintain a routine as simply as possible? And so that's kind of where we start. And then same thing for nutrition. Like, there are certain habits that you want to focus on. How can we get each individual person to do it? Because everybody has preferences too. Like some people like carbs, some people like fats. Some people don't, some people have to eat out on the go. What resources can we put in this person's hand so that they can, without all the fluff, just have something consistent.
So that's great. I think a lot of people, first of all, I think great insights. When I hear from HVAC plumbing people, they say a lot of lifting is already done. They don't need, they don't go to the gym. It's already it's labor job. It's HVAC plumbing. They are like you said, for plumbing, they're carrying a lot of stuff. And they say they don't want to, or they don't have time to go out there. So what's your approach? First of all, what steps should be taken to make sure you prioritize your health, though you have that heavy duty out there every single day? So what will be the approach from your perspective so that we can provide more value and start applying?
Well, to that person in particular, I would agree. Maybe this doesn't necessarily answer the question, but yes, they are doing a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of labor throughout the day. Yeah. But think about the fact that it only takes you slipping and falling one time for you to be out of work for months.
Yep.
And so sure, maybe you are lifting and you're very active throughout the day. I did roofing as a job in university. Nice. in the summer times, because it was one of the only labor jobs that really had no barrier to entry, and I could make I can't remember what it was much more than I could have made it elsewhere. And so I was doing that, but it was very hard work. You fall one time off a roof and you're out of work for months. And so you might be lifting lots, but you need to be strong in several ways. And so sometimes plumbers are going to get weird jobs where they have to step up and kind of be in a weird space. I want you to
Right.
be strong enough, stepping up on one leg at a time, that you can, even if it's like a really high step up, like you can do that without increasing your chance of hurting yourself in the process. And so
Longevity.
yeah, so I mean that's I think if it helps your audience at all, like just because your work is physical doesn't mean you're covering all your bases. And then so in terms of
Right.
practical, and so in terms of practical steps, like a lot of your schedule is unpredictable, but knowing what your average day-to-day life looks like, maybe Wednesdays for some reason are just like slow days for you. Cool. That's where a 45-minute workout is going to go in. And if you have to get in 3 per week, okay, maybe you have to do a Sunday, a Wednesday, and like a Friday. I don't know what those days are for you, but that would be the
Right.
first thing. Is the same way that you time block everything, you make you make exercising a priority. And you start from there. You make the habit of exercising as simple as possible to follow through on. Look at those little gaps in time that you have, and then make that your exercise
Choose
time.
your day, choose your days, block your time, and prioritize exercise over your daily routine work, right? Makes sense.
Sure. Like if you know that if you know that between 10 and 11 a.m. every day is when you have the most free time, cool. That's your gym time. You still get to have the evening with the family, and you still get to be attentive for all of your client calls. And if you're in more of like an ownership position, you can be there for your staff. Like just everybody has these time blocks in their day where they can fit things in. And so that's part of the no BS. It is as simple as, which 1 hour of a day, 3 times a week, do you have available? Cool.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to do this.
And that's your service, as you're helping them find that. With also, like, entrepreneurs are big thinkers, and maybe they're a little too ambitious at times when it comes to planning. I'm going to start working out, I'm going to start this fad diet. They go big on it and then can't meet up to the expectations that they set for themselves, and there's no consistency, and it actually never happens. This is probably the most common thing that I see, which is why I absolutely love what you're saying right now, because it is realistic. It's not this overinflated fast track view to something like a perfect ideal of something that's not actually sustainable for somebody with that lifestyle. It's something realistic, personal. You base it on them and their specific schedule. This sounds like a really great service for that. So I kind of want to bring up the fact of, obviously right now we have a lot of like information out there, like fad diets and like crazy workout plans. We just talked about fasting, a lot of us, and 48-hour fasts and subjects
Yesterday.
like that when you get
Yeah.
deeper into those subjects. So I guess are there anything out of the fads that you really like and you think is sustainable that you would recommend to people? Or do you think that there's any toxicity with that kind of culture right now?
I'm really glad you asked this. I wasn't expecting us to go this direction. I had this thought the other day, actually. I was trying to think, like, of all the things that I do for myself personally, do I fall into any of these categories? And I was like, well, I'm probably like 80% paleo, and I'm probably, I'm like going through the list, and I'm like, well, I do all of these things, and like I usually don't eat breakfast till 10 a.m., but I don't say it's fasting. There's a lot of things out there, and I think they're all tools in the tool belt. And so what's if you look at yourself and just be rational for a second and think, what's the likelihood I'm actually going to stick to this for a decade? And if the answer is, if you cannot do it for a decade, whether it's fasting, whether it's I think carnivore is one of the current ones.
That was mine.
Like
And
if you can,
Shreya literally, I think she's on that, right?
I'm still 80% on it. Yeah, that's what, but I've been able, it's sustainable for me because I already naturally almost eat mostly meat, and it's already naturally like fallen along those lines. I just tightened it up a little bit with the amount of seed oils or lack of carbs and stuff like that. So that's the reason why I did it, and just a test to see if it works. I don't know.
Well, and there's going to be differences for everyone, and I think that's usually my main filter is, are you going to stick to this for a decade? Because if we're trying to aim for a specific goal like weight loss, it needs to satisfy a few conditions of like, are you going to be in a calorie deficit? Is it going to provide you the nutrients that you need so that you're not having to take a bunch of different supplements, or that you're not going to go to a doctor one day and they're going to say, wow, your cholesterol is like really freaking high. Do you eat like 30 eggs a day? Like, what is what are you doing? So like, how can we satisfy these conditions? And I think what kind of like I did that thought experiment for myself. What I discover is like most people are going to be a little bit of a few different things, and so I don't say that I fast, but like technically I do. I just have an easier time eating breakfast at 10. I'm not super hungry right away when I wake up.
Today is my second, by the way. Today is my second day of intermittent fasting, and let's see how it goes. But yes, I have a mindset that I'm gonna continue if I see the results. And we posted on Facebook. We heard amazing feedback and responses. Even Shreya does. I think she mentioned 36-hour fasting. And I think it helps. Let's go more deeper into it. Maybe a couple of minutes. You want to share more about intermittent fasting, how it's helping and changing the lifestyle?
Okay, sure. A lot of the research that I think, well, not research, I think a lot of the claims that are usually made around it. And so this might tie into the toxicity question. I think that there can be with any of these. Depends on who's portraying it, what their intention is, and what they stand to gain from it. So, for example, with fasting is an easy example. And so I don't say that I do it simply because I don't really have a rigid structure. I just kind of push practice back a little bit. It's different time every day. But with something like fasting, for example, so a lot of times people will say like, oh, but you'll, if you do this, if you fast every day, or if you do like a full 24-hour fast or whatever, you'll have all this autophagy and it will help you live longer. But when you study lifespan of what that actually is correlated to, it's because they're in a calorie deficit. Right. And so it's taking this correlation and saying, oh, this is the cause. Like, well, you could have actually had the exact same result
if you weren't fasting with a calorie deficit.
Yeah, wow. And so like you could do it with any of the diets. Like if you were doing keto, if you were doing paleo, if you were doing, I think Atkins is still technically a thing. It used to be South Beach, but it's all these different names. These things get recycled over and over again. And so in terms of research wise, like the things that benefit you are usually can be seen in a lot of other diets. So really depends on who's sharing it and what their intention is. But fasting, I think, is probably one of the ones where it could be beneficial for people, because most people could usually skip breakfast and then eat later in the day.
Right.
Where I think it gets to be a slippery slope is I've definitely heard of people doing 48, 72, even week-long fasts. And I mean, I can't in good conscience recommend that. Like, I know what happens to the body when that, starts to happen. And
anything in the extreme.
It can be very slippery. We want to kind of be in the middle. I'm actually reading a book about it right now. It's called Anti-Fragile. And it's this idea you want some stressors in your life so that you can be less fragile, but you don't want so much that you can't recover from it.
Okay, yeah, you don't want to damage yourself in the process of trying to recover because you're being so extreme. I like your balanced approach. Like, it seems like this whole time it's not this erratic, like extremist kind of point of view. If you can't get up at 4 a.m. every day as a business owner and like lift 300 pounds, and you're not going to make it. It's like, I think that's what we're used to hearing in the content that we consume a lot as entrepreneurs, with the actual like algorithm that reaches us, to be honest. So it's nice. This is like a very realistic approach. And I kind of wanted to go into more of like what kind of workouts you usually do. How do you optimize a 30-minute, 40-minute time slot? What kind of workouts are your favorite? Strength training, HIIT? If you want to go through a couple of those.
So, strength training would be the one, simply because if you look, again, over time, I'm big on time frames. I think the older I get, the more I look at things in terms of like years and decades instead of weeks and months. And I think that's where a lot of that stuff that's pushed you on the algorithm comes from, is it's that quicker time frame, and people want that, and it seems really sexy.
Instant.
Whereas, I mean, even if you look at finance, all of the outsized returns come from the hold. Right. And holding an asset for really long periods of time. And so for me, like, I think of exercise the same way. What can I do a little bit of, but often, so that over time I get those outsized returns. And to me, that's strength training, because even though it's not cardio, you are getting a cardiovascular benefit from it. Your heart rate's getting elevated. It's usually staying elevated throughout the session, and you're building muscle, which is not only going to obviously help with your metabolism long term, but it's also a hedge against losing your results over time. It becomes a lot easier to maintain when you do have that fundamental base of muscle, and it's very hard to build muscle. I think a lot of people have this idea they're gonna lift some heavy weights and they're gonna turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, and you don't sneeze and end up jacked. It's not gonna happen. So for most people that I've worked with over the years, there are some, less than 10% of people are going to be exceptions. Most people fall in the category of lifting weights 3 or 4 times a week. My goal is always less than 60 minutes, ideally less than 45. I can't control how busy your gym is, so sometimes things don't work out perfectly, but ideally you get in there. Not stretching. I think a lot of people have that gym class warm-up mentality where you're gonna run on the treadmill for 10 minutes and do like your series of 6 stretches that you've done ever since you were 13 years old in high school.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He's like roasting me right now, I feel.
I would rather clients go in and do more of a full body mobility warm up. And so the easiest way to understand the distinction between flexibility and mobility is flexibility is like how much range of motion a joint has, like how far it can move, and mobility is how well you can move throughout it. And so I care more about that. And I'll get clients to come in, do like 5 minutes. They'll get some mobility of fluid, of heat, and just getting the muscles moving in the main joints of like their hips, their knees, their ankles, and their shoulders. And if we can do that for like 5 minutes, you're usually pretty ready for the session. Do 4 to 6 exercises really well, focusing on the first 1 or 2 exercises that you want to get your most strength benefit from, so you're going to push a little bit harder in those ones, and later on in the workout they can be more like accessory type stuff that aren't necessarily going to be as physically taxing but still provide some benefit.
That's
and
a great,
once
that's
you've
great advice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then once you've done that, just move more throughout the day. Like if you like cardio, cool, go do some cardio, go finish your workout with like 15 minutes. But if you don't and you're moving lots throughout the day, that's more than enough.
Got it. Spencer,
generally staying active.
This is my personal question I want to ask. I did for almost 2 years functional training. I had my personal coach. He was coming at my place and he was training me and my wife. And now I'm leaning towards more traditional weightlifting, right? What's your approach versus functional versus traditional weightlifting?
You guys are asking all the right questions today. I feel so lucky to be here.
Yes.
So with kinesiology being my background, like I studied human movement. And so a lot of the functional is one, I don't think it bugs me, but with my background, I can understand like that's another buzzword. And so for something to truly be functional, there has to be a crossover in like 5 criteria. I'm not really going to dive into them, but it would essentially be like how the force is applied and how repeatable the movement is and things like that. And so I used to see some of these when functional training first became a thing on social media. I would see these trainers, getting their clients to like jump up and do a 360 spin, and as they landed, they also had like dumbbells in their hands. It's like, when are you ever going to do that in real life? When are you?
So
there's not going to be a single. There's not going to be a single scenario where you have to 360 spinning back kick someone, like unless you're a martial artist. You're just not going to have to do that. And so, and so for me, like, what movements, back to the plumber example before, like sometimes you may have to work with pipes that are above your head and you're gonna have to step up onto a really high surface. Like that's, I would care more about you being able to do that well than to combine 3 things at a time. And so my bias is of course strength training, but there's going to be some differences for everyone. Like some people will need to do a really high step up because that's part of their job. They need to be able to do that. A nurse, or sorry, not a nurse, like a paramedic, maybe not necessarily in your field of study, but they're going to be able to, they're going to have to hug and hold someone and carry them and drag them backwards. So we're going to do some sled pulls. Some of those things are going to be very applicable.
this is really like
Amazing.
personal. And I wish I had this in HVAC because I can't tell you how many times I sprained myself and strained myself in HVAC, like lifting myself into the attic when I don't really have the same upper body strength as men. So it's basically like doing a full pull-up that I just like really can't do if my ladder's not tall enough, and just completely messing up my arm for a whole week. And then keep having to work like this is, I don't know why I've never heard of this, like training for the job that you have and the lifestyle that you live on a daily basis, for longevity. And yeah, like from what you're saying is you are seeing it as a true lifestyle when you talk about the decade, is like this is now my lifestyle. It's not something I'm going to do for a month and then if I don't have a six pack, just totally give up on it sort of thing. But it's for an array of reasons, for health, longevity, just feeling better, a lot of different things. So thanks for being so practical with everything that you're saying, because you even brought me down to earth, because I'm a fanatic with a lot. I totally fall in to fanaticism when it comes to this stuff. If I hear the craziest thing, I just want to do it.
Yeah.
And be really intense about it, or take on too much by working out and weight training like every day at 4 a.m. with my schedule, just because I feel like if I don't do it that way, then I'm not hardcore enough, or so. I don't even know where I'm getting this subconsciously, probably TikTok, honestly.
It might be. Well, I mean, if I could help summarize it really easily, fitness is not a game that you win. The point of fitness is not to get in shape and then get back out of shape. The point is to get there and stay there. And so you have to play the game forever. And that has to be built in from the beginning.
Right. I think someone recently mentioned I'm playing tennis tournament, and we'll just wrap up pretty quick. So that guy mentioned that, he plays tennis to stay fit. So, but I don't agree. I said like, don't play tennis to stay fit. Stay fit to play tennis, right? So fitness plays a big role when you are active, when you're doing your fitness, it's there in your regime. Yes, wonders happen there. So I agree to that, and I think you have a lot to share when it comes to like fitness, diet. I think we can dive maybe deeper into it later. But I think if someone wants to reach out to you, like how can someone reach out to you to get started, or just like help for the coaching, like from your side?
I try to do as much free coaching as I can inside of my private Facebook group, but the easiest way to get in contact with me would just to be, friend request on Facebook or follow me on Instagram. It's Spencer Sharpe Fitness. Sharpe has an E on the end. It's one of those weird British names that it's just
Sharpe.
the E is not the E is not pronounced. So it's funny enough that used to be one of my hockey nicknames. Is people used to call me Sharpe, like the High School Musical girl. It was like a funny take a jab at you type nickname.
I won't call you that. I'm sorry, that brought up.
Oh, hey, I've gone to therapy. I did all. I confronted everything I needed to. But the easiest way would just be connect with me on Facebook. I think probably the only reason I did get recommended is because I try to just give as much as possible. I know there's a lot of influencers with they're very pretty and they're very good at getting attention. The men and the women, they get all the likes and the shares and everything, and so they get all of that and they get to put a lot of things out. I just want to make sure people have the right information. Anybody that wants to work with me and have the customization and have the one-to-one accountability, they'll make it known. But it's my job in the meantime to just put as much good as I can out there. So Facebook and Instagram is the best way. And if we end up chatting, I'll probably invite you to my free group. I try to go live in there once or twice a week, teaching these kinds of things and making sure that people have access.
That's amazing. We will link everything in the description. Yeah. Yeah,
sure. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your experience with everything. I think this is going to be extremely helpful to everybody, especially with the topics we've been yapping about lately that we probably don't know much about. So thanks so much for taking the time out of your day, and for all the listeners, thanks for supporting us always, and till next time.